Hello and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner and today is December 18th, 2018. You can always get our information by dialing 1-800-472-0391 or go to the website by typing in weather.gov/Alaska and then clicking on the areas that you'd like to see. Now let's go on to the topics of the day that are important now across the area. We do have snow that's continuing to move all the way to the north coast. So we've reported up to 8 inches out of Adigan Pass, and Bettles had seen up to 8 inches of snow by today, and they're going to continue to receive heavier snow amounts between 6 to 12 inches as we head through Thursday afternoon. So expect ongoing snow conditions due to this low pressure system in the Gulf continuing to help push moisture up to the north coast locations. You can see that we have a very cold air mass on the back side of this system. This is indicated by the darker gray colors, which you can really see across the western areas of the Gulf. Low pressure system is spinning across the southeast, and that you can see right here off the coast of Ketchikan and Sitka. Here's that cold air advection off of Kodiak Island, putting that into motion one more time, and you can see that lifting to the north. In the meanwhile, to the west, we have low pressure that's pushing a front out towards the central Aleutians. You can see that along this line here, and at the surface, we're seeing a front that's situated pretty much from the western Aleutian chain back towards the Kamchatka Peninsula there. Now, this front is mainly bringing some light rain across the frontal boundary, some strong gusty southerly flow with the boundary, and just between this low pressure system and the low pressure system over the Gulf, some very cold temperatures keeping light snow showers, as we do have quite a bit of surface moisture. So mainly just some light snow though, nothing accumulating. The main places where we're seeing snow accumulations are from the north slope down towards the Kenai Peninsula. Between 1 to 3 inches of snow have fallen today, and for the areas north towards Skagway, seeing between 1 to 3 inches, and that snow pattern is going to continue. We'll get to that in just a moment, but let's mention right now the front across the eastern Gulf. We're seeing some light rain activity with this and a strong southerly push of wind between 30 to 50 mile per hour gusts for the southeast. Now, on the backside of the system, we're having a strong northerly flow. The northerly flow is pretty much pushing across the western range through the Cook Inlet and Kodiak Island. So that northwesterly flow more so for the southwestern Gulf locations, becoming a little bit more westerly across the central waters. So there's a transition between that colder air mass and the warmer air mass around the low pressure system. That came up as a warm front yesterday. So a moderated air mass, but we do have that cold air coming in very quickly behind the system. Now let's look at the front for tonight pushing across the Aleutians. That's going to be pushing towards the Pribilofs tonight, and that's going to bring some light snow along with some blowing snow at times, but visibilities will only be reduced to about 1 to 3 miles. So no big effects from this system, just some annoying gusty southeasterly flow between 20 to 40 miles per hour. And then on the backside of this system, it's going to moderate, slightly warmer with colder air mass on its way behind it. Now, for the overnight hours, we'll see that ongoing snow across the north coastal locations all along the backside of this low. Now the low pressure system looks very similar, but it's moving from that northeast Gulf and pushing towards the Prince William Sound. So with the axis, 2-axis noted across this system, we'll see the snow primarily just pulling in across the Chugach Range, the Kenai Peninsula. A little bit of a convergence zone will help continue snow. And we've seen ongoing snow across the state all day today. So primarily lower amounts though, between 1 to 3 inches, again possible tonight with the system. Now we'll see cooler temperatures bring a mix of rain and snow for the southeast, mainly rain still across the eastern waters as that still seems to be moderating ahead of this low pressure system. It's retrograding back, so it's keeping that cold air yet from surging across towards the east. Now for the west coast locations, that's going to be the driest areas and a little bit quieter for winds. However, we're going to see that changing gusty condition moving across towards the eastern Aleutians tomorrow as we get a new developing low pressure system at the base of the front. The occlusion kind of breaks up and just kind of allows a colder air mass to advect across. So we get a stronger east to southeasterly push again with an upper level wave reinforcing the frontal boundary itself. We'll have a mix of rain and snow for the eastern Aleutians. They'll moderate a warmer temperature up from the North Pacific around the low pressure center that's developing. The Alaska Peninsula should stay on the drier side, although a few upper waves moving ahead of the system will produce some snow shower activity ahead of it. But primarily the West Coast, once again on Wednesday, stays on the drier side, and those winds are going to be coming down the Bering Strait. So a little bit calmer a day for the North and West Coast locations, other than the snow that's going to be pushing up through Fairbanks, the interior, all the way up to the Brooks Range. Now, we'll see a mix of rain and snow for the southeast starting out tomorrow, with that warmer air mass still being in the eastern Gulf locations. That's going to bring a little bit more of an unstable air mass, so isolated thunderstorms are going to be possible on Wednesday as this upper low just kind of swings a short wave across, and the upper level system will line up better with this surface low across the western Gulf waters. So that's why we're not seeing any movement in this front, because the upper low systems have not been connected. So as we head into the Wednesday afternoon hours, this gusty conditions will move over to the Alaska Peninsula. So the main weather activity for the Alaska Peninsula is going to be on the uptick for your Thursday, with mainly snow, but we'll see a mix of rain and snow early on, as this low pressure system was a warm core system to originate with. Behind this system, we have another low pressure that will push another frontal boundary yet again, but the cold air mass is going to move much faster towards the central Aleutians, and with that cold air mass, that will override the warmer air mass that's moving up from the North Pacific. Across the northern waters, St. Matthew and St. Lawrence Islands will keep a tighter pressure gradient, so we'll see more of a stronger northerly flow for the northern waters, but mainly under showery conditions as a ridge kind of dominates along the Bering Strait and just north. We also have another ridge center that's to the east of the northeast of the state, and note that we do have all these snow showers continuing through Thursday, and mainly we're seeing this because we have an upper low that will be developing along the Alcan border, and we're also going to be seeing a surface low drop in axis from the northwest. So between the combination of the two, that's why we'll see the ongoing snow. Now, for the low pressure system that's currently in the Gulf, that will be winding down and weakening from 985 millibars to 996 millibars. However, a trough axis is going to continue for the southeast. We should mainly see a transition over to snow by Thursday, but we can't rule out the chance of rain and snow showers there closer towards the Dixon entrance. On the backside of this system, can't rule out snow here as well, as long as the trough is in the location that the strong upper level wave is going to be pulling inland, with some energy still continuing the shower activity across the southern mainland. Drier still, though, will continue for the southwest as that cold air and drier air mass continues ahead of the system developing over the Alaska Peninsula. Now let's take a look at the temperatures for tonight. We're going to see temperatures mainly staying in the middle to upper 30s for the southeast location again, and across the western Gulf locations, a notable change into the teens is going to be felt for the Kodiak Island. The southwest is going to stay on the colder side, between 10 to 25 degrees below zero, 10 to 20 degrees below zero for the interior and northern areas of the state. With light winds and breezes, we'll see wind chills down to 40 to 45 below zero, mainly for the interior locations and along the Brooks Range. Looking out towards the west coast, temperatures in the single digits and teens for tonight, and temperatures primarily in the 20s moderating towards the freezing mark for the western half of the chain. Now for tomorrow, temperatures will get up into the mid-30s for much of the bearing with that warm frontal system in the area, but very cold temperatures across the northern and western locations of the state, mainly staying 5 to 15 below zero at this point. For the eastern areas of the state, we're going to see single digits climbing up to near 20 degrees by the time you get towards Prince William Sound and the Cook Inlet. So a little slightly warmer there, staying on the warmer side for the southeast tomorrow for the season on the warmer side of things. But as we head into Thursday morning, those temperatures are going to start notably dropping below the freezing mark for the southeast. So temperatures will be in the single digits to teens across much of the north and western coastal locations, with the interior seeing widespread temperatures between 10 to 20 degrees below zero. So very cold morning on Thursday, with the west coast seeing single-digit transition. Eastern bearing here's the transition where we'll see temperatures mainly in the mid-30s to lower 30s throughout the bearing. Now for your high temperatures, it's not going to be that warm for Thursday. We're going to keep that cold air mass pulling on the western areas of the state. So temperatures at best are going to be in the single digits and teens across much of the mainland, possibly moderating with this system coming up across the Alaska Peninsula. We'll see temperatures there in the mid-30s, possibly moderating the western Gulf into the mid-20s. And for the southeast, temperatures are going to barely reach 40 and stay below 40 degrees for your Thursday afternoon. So in just a moment is your aviation forecast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Now we're going to move on to your aviation weather. Let's take a look across the state. You'll see widespread MVFR to start your day on Wednesday, with IFR conditions also expected across parts of the southern mainland, and also along the northern tier of the state we're going to see IFR and MVFR conditions. Along the Bering, expect a front to bring IFR conditions across the western and central Aleutians there, the western waters. And then widespread MVFR will stay the same across the Bering, with that IFR condition spreading further to the east as the front pushes over towards the Pribilof Islands. Some snow along this boundary will create some IFR conditions, blowing snow possibilities, with possibly mixed with rain towards the Dutch Harbor locations. Now, the areas across the interior will see a patchy MVFR conditions for the afternoon as the upper level waves move away from two low pressure systems. Now, the Gulf waters will stay in MVFR range as well as the southeast, with a chance of isolated thunderstorms moving into the southeast as greater instability moves in around the low pressure system moving in that direction. Now, across the northern tier of the state, IFR and MVFR conditions will continue pretty much the same, little bit improvement across the eastern parts of the Brooks Range. And then as we head into Thursday morning, that IFR condition is going to be mainly across the western Brooks Range, with MVFR widespread, some breaks in the conditions across the interior and southwestern areas of the state, with isolated thunderstorms still possible for the southeast during the morning hours. Now let's take a look across the Bering and locations. We'll see that front is spreading towards the west coast, so IFR conditions stretching down towards the eastern Aleutians. And then we'll see, once again, widespread MVFR conditions as we head into Thursday afternoon. Another front will be bringing IFR conditions back to the western Aleutians. Now we'll see some improvement across the south for your Thursday afternoon, with MVFR mainly across the Gulf waters, and then across the northern tier of the state is going to be staying in the same MVFR IFR that afternoon. Now for your passes in more depth, we will see Aniktuvik for your Wednesday in the IFR range, as well as Adigan, but that shall improve to MVFR during the afternoon. Now Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will be IFR to MVFR, and Rainy will do the same, IFR to MVFR during the afternoon. For Wednesday for Windy, we'll go VFR to MVFR during the afternoon, and Isabel will stay MVFR pretty much all day. Some breaks are possible. Mentasta will go from MVFR improving to VFR, and Tanita will improve from IFR to MVFR. For Portage, look for IFR conditions, but towards the west entrance we'll see MVFR conditions. And for your Chilkoot and White Pass, MVFR all day. Now let's take a look at your freezing levels for Wednesday morning. That's going to be draped across the eastern areas of the Gulf and the North Gulf, and then sloping south of Kodiak Island, and then draped along the central areas of the Bering. Now with a warm front coming up, we do see that 2,000-foot level still staying below the Aleutian chain, and that will also be climbing to 2,000 feet towards the Dixon entrance. Looking at your icing concerns for Wednesday, well, it's fairly widespread across the state in the surrounding waters below 5,000 feet, with those upper level waves bringing those fronts up to the coast, and then across the Bering waters. Be aware that there's possibility for some isolated to moderate conditions out to the west. Now here's the upper level jet stream. A little bit more of a polar jet is becoming defined, bring that colder air mass into the Gulf waters there. Amplification of the low pressure between two ridges, and then the subtropical jet stream has got a fairly strong streak at 160 knots there south of the chain. Looking at your 9,000-foot level winds, we do have a speed max out across the western chain there between 40 to 70 knots, with lighter and different flow across the Bering as we have low to the north and a little bit of a weak low pressure system in the Bering. So directional wind changes, but the most notable winds across will be the Alaska Peninsula to Kodiak Island, 40 to 60 knot winds out of the northwest in that direction, and 35 to 40 knots across the southeast out of the south to southwest direction, affecting areas all the way up through the eastern Gulf. So pretty much the same at 3,000 feet, 30 to 45 knots, the strongest winds there. Lighter winds inland, and then strong winds across the Bering for your whole day Wednesday. Look for the strongest winds across the chain. The southwest should be aware, and the southeast will also be stronger winds.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and we have a special guest in the studio today. We welcome Amanda Terborg of the Aviation Weather Center. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Amanda's flown in all the way from Kansas City, and for those of you that don't know, the Aviation Weather Center serves the lower 48 for aviators, just as the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit here in Anchorage serves all of Alaska. So I kind of wonder, what's the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City doing to help out Alaska, Amanda?
Yeah, you know, we do a lot of collaboration work with our sister station up here. Lately, we've been doing a lot of work, especially in the satellite meteorology.
Okay.
In particular, we have been looking at ways to better identify icing conditions in clouds, which is a big deal up here because, as I'm coming to find out, even though I'm not from here, you guys have a lot of pilots here.
You have a lot of pilots. In fact, when you say you can't get there from here, that's how you get there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so with icing potential then, what's Kansas City working on?
Well, we are working on something that will help us, again, identify the icing in the clouds. You don't want ice on your aircraft.
No.
Not only does it add a whole bunch of extra weight to your airframe when it attaches to the wings and the nose cone, but it can also mess with your aerodynamics.
Right.
And in the most serious conditions, that can mess with it enough that you can actually crash.
It changes the shape of the wing, and that makes it sometimes impossible to fly, right?
It does, yeah. So we want to figure out a way to better forecast for that.
Makes sense.
Now this particular image is over Alaska. The colors here are a little goofy. It doesn't look like your run-of-the-mill satellite image.
Okay.
But the red is where you have liquid clouds and the blue is ice. But again, it really doesn't tell you a lot where you have icing conditions in that cloud. Because in those clouds there's little droplets, and they're cold, and they're actually below freezing, but they're still liquid, and that makes them sticky.
Okay.
So when an aircraft flies through there, those droplets are sticking to the aircraft, and it can happen amazingly fast.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to find. And there is a product called the Aircraft Flight Icing Threat that does this. And it's basically looking at the temperature of the cloud, and it's also looking at the size of the droplets to identify a probability and intensity of those icing conditions.
Okay.
And if you flip to the next image, this is a case from Juneau, Alaska, where this probably wouldn't have been the best day to fly around Juneau.
Okay.
Now there was an area of moisture that pushed south from the southwest up along the coast that pushed in a stratus layer, and in the stratus layer there was a lot of those super cooled liquid drops, or a lot of stickiness.
Okay.
And so the flight icing threat was able to, in the pinks and the reds there, was able to identify where that icing was. Now this is really cool. You know, it's really cool to be able to identify that there
Sure.
is, you know, of course, caveats to every product. Much as we wish it would happen, sun doesn't shine all the time, unless, I guess, if you live in northern Alaska during the summertime.
Right, right.
But we need that sun to be able to bounce off those clouds and to be able to see where those super cool drops are.
Okay, so it's a daytime only tool.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, of course, you know, we're in the era of advanced satellite technology, and there is a satellite that can actually use moonlight to see clouds.
Yes.
And so sometime in the future, we hope to be able to do that.
Okay.
Another thing that is a bit of a challenge is multiple layers of clouds. You know, you can only see so far through a thick cloud.
Okay.
And if it's thick enough, sometimes you can't see a layer of icing that's below there.
Right, right.
But even besides those caveats, this product has a lot of potential to help out Alaskan aviators here.
Well, it sounds like a really big deal, and something that forecasters at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit could use probably on a daily basis, and especially in the middle of a really big storm.
Yeah, I would think so.
Do you have a really good success story in the lower 48 using this tool?
You know, it's a fairly new product, and so we're still evaluating it. But yeah, we have had a lot of cases where we have seen that it does tend to capture those icing conditions.
Okay, very good. Well, Amanda, thanks so much for sharing some of the very interesting satellite imagery and the tools that you're using there at the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City with us here in Alaska. People can probably find some of this information online, right?
Yeah, here is a website here. It's a page from NASA Langley, and they have this imagery as well as a bunch of other satellite imagery that you can take a look at.
Okay, great. And I'm sure our friends at the Alaska Aviation Weather Center and the unit will be using that in the coming months there with your training and your help there to learn more about that tool to help Alaska aviators any day of the year. That's wonderful stuff. So thanks again for joining us, Amanda, and we welcome you to view any of our Alaska weather facts on YouTube anytime at the address below, and we'll see you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And now on to the marine portion of the show. We're going to start off with your sea ice edge, looking at the ice continuing to expand southward as a cold air mass advex across the northern waters. We're also seeing some ice growth along the northern Cook Inlet, so expect that continued growth to continue through the end of the week. And then moving on to your southeast forecast, those strong gustier winds are going to be tapering down somewhat, but we're still staying in that small craft advisory range for the outer waters there, with gusts up to 45 knots across the northern Lynn Canal. For the inner channels, we're seeing seas on this day mainly between 4 to 7 feet, and then seas across the outer waters between 15 to 18 feet. On Thursday, expect some directional wind changes, northerly flow setting up across the northern channels there, and then towards the Dixon entrance becoming more southeasterly. A little bit lighter flow across the inner channels, and then 20 to 30 knots across the outer waters, seas between 15 to 18 feet once again. Now, the inner waters are going to be 3 to 6 foot for your seas on Thursday. Looking across the northern and western Gulf locations, we're going to see the strongest winds across the tip of the Kenai Peninsula with storm force winds out in that direction. The Prince William Sound and northern inlet will be 15 knots, but between northeasterly flow across the inlet and a southeasterly flow across the Prince William Sound. Seas on this day will be between 9 to 11 feet, and seas across the inlet will be between 3 to 6 feet, with higher seas across the area where we're going to see those storm force gusts with seas up to 16 feet. For your day on Thursday, winds are going to be tapering down, more of a northerly flow continuing though for the western Gulf and along the Cook Inlet, with more of a northeasterly flow across the northern waters, lighter speeds out in that direction. Northeast Gulf could see some small craft for that day out of the northeast at 25 knots. And we'll see seas on this day 2 feet for the inlet and the Prince William Sound, and then 4 to 8 feet across the Gulf locations, a little bit higher seas to 12 feet out towards the northeast Gulf. Now for Wednesday, expect the Alaska Peninsula to have the strongest winds along the eastern side, and along the Pacific side, we'll see more of a westerly push. We'll see gale force winds for most of those locations, with more of a southeasterly wind on the western peninsula side. The Bering will see 7 to 8 foot seas, and the Pacific side will be between 13 to 15 feet. For your Thursday forecast, more of a northerly, northeasterly flow to easterly flow for the area. Small craft advisory once again, and seas between 5 to 6 feet across the Bering side. For the North Pacific side, between 7 to 17 feet, the higher seas just south of the Alaska Peninsula. Now for your western Aleutian chain, we're going to see a southwesterly wind becoming more westerly and then more southerly with the 2 low pressure systems out in that direction. Mainly small craft across the area with seas between 10 to 20 feet with higher seas out towards Shimia. And then on your Thursday, we'll see wind directional changes, gales coming into the western Aleutians at 35 knots, 17-foot seas out towards the west with more of a 10 to 17-foot sea across the Bering and North Pacific side there to the east, because we have that second system flowing to the north. Now along the west coast, we'll see mainly small craft advisories towards the Pribilof Islands. The west coast will see wind directional changes north to east, becoming southeasterly in the southern waters, and then we'll see seas between 4 to 14 feet, highest seas towards the central waters there, and then primarily a uniform flow for your Thursday out of the northeast direction. Small craft advisory near the southwest coast there and out towards the central waters. Lighter speeds to the north and south on that day. On the north and west coast, lighter speeds for your Wednesday between 10 to 20 knots, seas in ice-free waters at 4 foot. And then on your Thursday, 10 to 20 foot range continuing out of the north and east direction, 8-foot seas towards the Bering Strait locations. So to recap things, we're going to see ongoing snow across the northern areas of the state with winter storm advisories along the Brooks Range and just south, and ongoing snow across much of the southern interior and across the southeast, a mix of rain and snow. The front across the western waters will be pushing towards the central Bering, bringing some snow shower activity ongoing, and then the south will continue in a lighter snow pattern.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.